Good morning, everybody, or evening, or wherever it is that you are currently. Welcome to our October AMA. It is that wonderful time of year where for some of us it's 80 degrees, for some people it's 50, and if you're in the Dakotas, apparently you got 2 feet of snow last night. So it's that fun time of year where the weather is all over the place, aka fall. Unless you're in Australia, then it's spring. But good morning, all. Sorry for the slightly late delay there on the start, giving folks time to come in on to watching the stream, as well as JM had a little bit of technical difficulties as well. But everybody's here now, so we're ready to get started. As always with our AMAs, if you're in the Zoom meeting room, the Q&A in Zoom, please put your questions in the question and answer box. Don't put them in the chat. If you're watching elsewhere, like on the YouTube live stream, you can put questions in the YouTube chat. We will try to keep an eye out for them. We will do our best. But if you have the ability to go into the Zoom call and put them in the Q&A, that's the best place to put them to be sure that we definitely see them and get to them. Other than that, welcome everyone, and I'll let everyone have a chance to say hi real quick. That's you guys.
Good morning. Trying to find a coffee.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Good evening.
For all of us doing this, it is like 10 a.m. on a Friday, so a lot of us are kind of slow to start. We got some very good feedback that most of ours had been in afternoons, which is not great for certain parts of the world. And more importantly, it was consistently in afternoons. It was consistently not great for parts of the world. So I'm trying to move these around. So every 2 to 3 weeks, we'll do one, sometimes in our time in the morning Pacific time, sometimes in the evening Pacific time, sometimes in the afternoon, so that as we kind of shuffle around, we'll hopefully hit different parts of the world. People can always watch the videos on YouTube after. They're always posted, but if we move them around, at least you can get involved and maybe ask questions in your time zone. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and get the low-hanging fruit question out of the way right now that everyone's already asked. When U.S. exchanges?
Soon. Keep asking them.
Yeah. Honestly, it's up to the U.S. exchanges far more than it is us. So keep asking them, because the more they get asked, the higher priority they will make it. We have a couple over here. Let's see. Here's a nice little fun technical one. Can you explain the difference between the VDF we use in Chia versus the VDF that's on Eth2?
Certainly. So we chose to use class groups of an unknown order, which would allow us to not have to have a trusted setup. For various reasons, the Ethereum team wanted to use the RSA version of this because it was, quote unquote, better known. Now, the math behind class groups of unknown order is actually in some ways deeper and richer than even RSA, certainly more historical. So the attempt from Ethereum 2 was to figure out how to do a multi-party signing ceremony that would actually create a RSA key pair that no one knew the actual secret key to. That didn't work. So right now, there's been a retrenchment, at least for Ethereum 2 and Filecoin and others, to try to do a snark-related VDF to, again, try to avoid trusted setup. We now have a VDF fully in production, whereas we announced earlier this week, have embarked on building an ASIC for that. So we think it's actually going to be a likely standard simply because it is practically in use and will have lots of tools and lots of software available for it. So,
cool. Awesome. On that, before I go to the next question, I actually had a little flow of things I was going to say before we started, and I completely skipped over the most important one. Let me go back to that real fast. Congrats on our 1 millionth block being farmed last night. It was about around 2 a.m., 1:30 a.m. Pacific time, I think, for us, somewhere around there. I lost track.
I think it was earlier than that.
Was it earlier?
I think it was 1:30 East Coast. I think it was around 10:40 Pacific.
Yeah. Was it that early?
Yeah.
Oh, because I was watching things. And then I was like, oh, that's gonna hit between 1 and 2. I'm gonna go to bed. And at 10 o'clock, I just went to bed early because of this.
I think Fish had a Zoom thing at some absurdly late time last night, Jay.
Yeah, well, absurdly late for you because you're 2 hours ahead of us. But yeah, if I'd known it ended up being that much earlier, I would have stayed up. I went to bed thinking it was gonna be a lot later because of this call. So whoops, I missed it. But yeah, we hit our 1 millionth block last night. So congrats to the lucky farmers who found that block. Maybe find out who they are. I'll 3D print some pretty little like block thing in Chia green, like send it to them or something if I find out who it is. Anyways, on to our next set of questions. On our roadmap, they say, I know you're probably not able to discuss details for Atari and Asteroids, which is correct, we can't. But can we give them a general update on whether things are ahead of schedule, or on schedule, or behind schedule for each project?
So the Asteroids project had the more sensitive time schedule. It has slid a little bit on the customer side by about a week or two, and so we actually used that as an opportunity to do a little bit more refining. Primarily, what Asteroids is one of the first major uses of cats, what we used to call colored coins, and so we really want to make sure that the 1.0 standard is flexible and easily upgraded to future versions of the standard in ways that the asset issuer doesn't have to like do it all himself. So that is on track. I believe we're actually cutting a test release for ourselves over the weekend to test that in the new wallet that goes with it. And you should be seeing an actual release of Chia relatively soon that includes that. I think the thing most people as end users will love is our new Electrum style wallet, which takes minutes to sync instead of days to sync. I think that's going to be a very exciting change, and we're excited to use that new wallet. It's part of the reason why the old wallet didn't get much love, as we knew we were going to be replacing it with this. On Project Atari, their timelines are a little bit more relaxed on their side. But fundamentally, what we're building here is an ability to federate databases between parties that kind of only lightly trust each other or don't trust each other. And the data that goes on chain is fundamentally kind of a singleton that coordinates the global database, if you will. And what gets published to chain is actually updates. So think about the Merkle root of a SQL update that would then be pulled between the databases and confirmed that it's the right thing by checking the hash. And that keeps all the various federated databases in sync without putting all of the PDFs and shape files and user information and whatever the heck you're putting in that other database on chain. We're kind of excited about that. There are a lot of use cases where people kind of wanted to overload the blockchain with data. This is a bad idea. But by using this method, as long as you don't have extremely fast update needs, you have an ability to really run a bunch of real databases doing what real databases do well, and have them stay synced using a singleton and Chialisp and Merkle roots of all those changes. We do think we'll be able to start explaining to you who and what these projects are in the November timeframe. They are very, very large customers with very, very large global impact, and so they wish to control their messaging first. So that is the reason why we call it Project Atari and Project Asteroids, so you know what we're up to, but not exactly for who. I will certainly say, as asked earlier in the general channel on Keybase, that it is climate related.
Thanks. So another of the hot topic questions I expected us to get at the start of this call actually took 10 minutes, longer than I expected. So they ask, with the release of 1.2.9, there was a change in the database syncing to where pragma sync was changed from full to off. This has caused many people to have a corrupted database after a sudden power outage. And can we get some clarity on why this was changed for a small increase in syncing speed and what the plans are to address the corrupt issue? I actually have spoken with the engineers about this question yesterday because I knew this would come up. So a couple things on this. For starters, just to be clear, it was actually 1.28. Not that it makes a huge difference, but 1.29 was just literally a typo fix, but it was a very annoying typo fix. This change was made because the team had a discussion internally about the pros and cons, and there was a genuine, honest misunderstanding about some of the cons in how the discussion resolved, and some of the true impact of the cons wasn't fully realized right away. So they put it out with good intentions because at the time they thought, based on the feedback we've been getting, which is a lot of feedback about syncing speed being the largest pain point people have, they thought this was tackling an important problem in a decent way. They have now learned that obviously they traded one pain for another. There's still some question on understanding exactly what is happening with the people who lose power, because this change can cause that to happen, but not always. And the rate at which they're seeing things makes them think there might be more than one problem here. So in the next update coming out soon, this is actually being changed to a setting that's user controllable. Users can decide which way they want to swing their pros and cons. If they want to have it super safe but slow, or faster but risky if they lose power, you can choose. And then they're going to keep looking at ways to improve these things. Also, that means because there may be other problems here, this doesn't mean us changing this to make it user controllable is going to 100% solve the problem. So if they roll this back, or not really roll it back because they're making it user editable now instead of forcing it any one way. If they do that, don't like freak out if you still see reports of power losses and other things called DB corruption. It just means there were multiple causes, and then we need to find those. I'm not saying there is multiple causes. They simply say they're not 100% confident in saying making this change will 100% solve it for everyone, but they are going to let you now control the change at least.
Yeah, and my 2 cents to the team. I dealt with a lot of power loss protection on data center SSDs. So if you guys, most data center SSDs have power loss protection. So when you have an unsafe power loss or a hot plug, the firmware uses capacitors on board to write the metadata from the DRAM to the NAND. And like consumer drives don't handle this well, period, right? And obviously, if you have a consumer SSD and you lose power, you'd rather not brick your drive and just lose a little bit of data. And in USB sticks and SD cards and all the things that people are using to store the database on for Chia, like, are not enterprise type devices. So if you do see a power loss, it might have nothing to do with Chia software. There is a small percent chance that the device can't recover.
And like
there's one other thing I want to add. The speed up was not small. If you're using SSD, the speed up was small. If the speed up was on a hard drive, you're talking about a 2 or 3x speed up in sync time. So it was a material positive for certain people in a regular use case.
Well, not just hard drive, but also SD card as well. So like our Pi farmers.
Well, we could get into it, but I believe that the SD card didn't see as much of an increase because the write latency isn't there.
Yeah, maybe not 3x, but I think it was like maybe like 1, 2.
Yeah, I do think you're right that it was a slight increase even there.
All right. Next up, any idea on a target for the demo that's listed on the public Trello board? Is this demo going to be public? I have to admit, I'm a little unclear what they mean by demo. I haven't looked at the Trello board in a week or so. Do you guys know what they're asking? Like, what's on the Trello board that says demo?
I'm looking.
Right.
Let's see.
I guess I could have seen that question while you were talking. I could have looked this up and been ready for that, but I'm not smart enough to think of that.
I think that's a Paul H question.
How about we go take another question and come back to it?
We'll come back to that. We will figure that out and come back with an answer in a little bit. Can we clarify the actual current transactions per second capacity? And what's the method in the future we have to avoid abusive rate increases when network usage increases? I think what they're asking is, how many transactions can we handle, and how can we keep the transaction fees from being like F?
Well, we're already 20 to 30% faster than ETH as it exists today. The other issue is that because we're not in the account model, you'll actually get a heck of a lot more scalability in just moving the coins in each transaction. So it's in some ways not exactly an apples to apples comparison. It should be that we are actually faster than that. There's an additional set of technology people kind of aren't aware of being there, but there is actually both block compression and cross-chain compression. So if you have a relatively large smart coin, but it gets repeated a lot, or if you have a smart coin that is kind of a library for your other smart coin, you literally get them compressed into only the deltas. So unlike an Ethereum, you're able to reference an existing block for quite a while to, kind of take the higher bit size issues out. And I think that's going to have a real serious impact in the perceived and actual transaction volume. So, when Bram talks about this, his view is that even if we're wildly successful, we still have 6 to 12 months before, you even get some fee pressure. And that's a lot of just really good design. Bram spent a lot of time and the rest of the team and making sure that, we've chosen the constants and the speeds very well. But, as we've said before in other AMAs, and as you can actually see on the product roadmap on the Trello board, we're convening a group of folks that we've gotten together in the past to really talk about exactly what we want to do, whether it's just Lightning and L2, some of the other options. Chialisp was very much written with Lightning specifically in mind to make it very easy to implement Lightning on Chia. In fact, if you're watching the Bitcoin core development community right now, they're starting to realize that Taproot, which we shipped with, makes it much easier to do a lot of the different Lightning things they've been wanting to do, and Graftroot does it even further than that, and we already have Graftroot. So from that perspective, we're pretty comfortable, and we expect to kind of start, real engineering work on that during the year next year. Partially because, the running joke here is it's my job to prove Bram wrong and get us to fee pressure.
I like that. Your job to prove Bram wrong. Next up, we got Chia. This person feels Chia misses a name service like ENS, and they looked into building one after they saw that our work that we did on DID, would that provide similar functionality?
Well, the interesting thing is we actually have a PR for ENS. There were a couple comments from the moderator that he needed changed, but we actually are going to be supported by ENS shortly. You could use DID to do this. Our implementation isn't complete on the kind of on-chain side of the DID wallet, but we will be turning to that pretty quickly after we complete Project Atari.
Here's another fun exchange one. I know that Chia is currently listed on KuCoin. Do we know if this is real XCH in the sense people have been able to deposit and withdraw without problems? From what
Yes.
you know,
Because I've done it.
yeah, asking because it seems crazy that KuCoin's more advanced integrations from Coinbase. So as JM said, yeah, he's done it.
I definitely have purchased Chia on KuCoin and withdrawn it to my own Chia wallet. So
what I will say about exchanges is there are, as this person has says, there's kind of two kinds of exchanges right now. There's exchanges that you can buy Chia on and withdraw it to your wallets. And there's ones who say you can buy it and you can sell it, but you can't withdraw it. I don't think anyone here wants to straight up accuse the latter ones of not actually having Chia and letting you buy and sell futures of Chia because of a combinations of reasons. But ultimately, if they won't let you withdraw it, that's kind of a caveat emptor. Like, you know what you're getting into, so kind of decide for yourself if that meets your needs and suits what you want. We don't know for sure how any one exchange is operating. Obviously, if an exchange lets you withdraw Chia, it's very easy for us to say, yes, it's real Chia. If they're not, we don't know the inner machinations of those things. So it's kind of hard for us to give you a specific answer. And we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to accuse someone of buying and selling not real Chia who actually is. They just, have whatever reason chosen not to let you withdraw it.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add is that smaller exchanges may have significantly less internal infrastructure and requirements. And what I mean here is that only one of the major HSMs out there currently supports BLS, and it currently supports it in what's called G1 instead of G2, and we're in G2. So some of the exchanges, due to their own internal, say, SSA 18 audit requirements, can't yet support it because it's coming from the hardware manufacturers, where somebody like KuCoin may be willing to, run an offline wallet using our tools directly, and therefore take on a little more risk, but not a lot, and be available sooner than someone who's a public company who must absolutely follow their internal policies.
Yeah, the policy and the volume too. Like, if Coinbase had Chia, the volume they're going to transfer is going to be so high that workarounds, even if they fit policies, workarounds are going to be just too hands-on, demanding for them to actually keep up with. Poolharvester.io is shutting down, claiming that we are too commercial of an approach to blockchains. Do we have comments on this? From the person asking, they say, for me, nothing has been unexpected based on what we've said in the business white paper.
So my comment last night was along the lines of, that was the most creative blame us for your pool shutdown ever.
Yeah.
Because we're doing real things, in 2017, we couldn't launch a scammy blockchain. We had some work to do, and it took until 2021 to launch that chain. I'm kind of excited that in a little under 7 months, we're going to start talking about some of the largest customers in the world using a blockchain. I think this gets lost on the make money quick people. If you want to make money quick, we're not the chain for you. You should be off on one of these scam chains doing EVM clone stuff, because that's where the casino is. This is not the casino. And in fact, that's part of the issue. If you want serious players, global serious players, to use blockchain, they can't be seen as being on scammy chains with lightweight technology that are, bribing exchanges and doing all of these things that are kind of ugly out there, right? So the good news is we're going to have real significant non-blockchain use cases on blockchain, which is kind of the first time that's happened since stablecoins. So from that perspective, just a little more patience, and I think you're all going to be very excited about what happens here. And look, that's to be expected. I mean, we're being compared to chains that have been alive for 5 or 6 years and, quote, aren't out of beta even though they're running. Like, okay, whatever. So, long story short, we have not changed the plan. The plan is not to get rich quick. The plan is to create something of enduring value over the next decades.
something I've said a lot in conversations, past AMAs and other things. We're a blockchain technology company first, and a financial technology company second, and a cryptocurrency third, because we're not trying to make a currency to make everyone rich. We're trying to make the technology.
Gene, I think I'm fairly new here, but what I've found in speaking to a bunch of the developer community folks, that are in our sphere, found a growing number of developers that are into blockchain or into crypto or getting into these things now that are looking for a greener, more secure, more decentralized alternative that is a real blockchain that's going to carry them into the future. And I think it's an exciting part of what we're doing here.
Also, don't overlook that we're the largest node count blockchain ever by a significant margin. That is key to the early adopters. The early adopters who are serious, and these are people who are like working for governments or working for major banks. And their analysis is quite simple. They want more security than Bitcoin. They cannot have the bug for bug compatibility of the EVM and all of these other projects because they watch rect.news and they see Solana loses $20 million in EVM last week, 600 million lost on Ethereum 2 weeks ago. If you're the CIO of a major bank, you cannot have your transactions lost by the EVM. That's not an acceptable answer to the CEO of the bank when you lose bank capital on a blockchain.
One last thing I want to add before we go on to the next one. We're not blind to the fact that pools do need to be able to survive to do what they do, or to the fact that we need pools to help make the chain as distributed as it is, as decentralized as it is. We do feel for pools who have a legitimate problem or pain trying to remain in operation. But if a pool's upset because they can't just have huge margins that allow them to just make a ton of money, we're not as sympathetic to that. Like, we want pools to succeed. We want to help pools succeed. And we realize there's a symbiotic relationship between us and pool operators, and we want to support that. But if a pool is going to just say that we're too business, we're too corporate to allow them to actually be profitable or actually do anything, sorry, but like, the goals that we just outlined are more important than a pool making a 50% return on infrastructure costs.
Yeah, and also I would caution that, like, with a little longer time horizon, I think pools will do quite well.
Definitely.
It's more that you've got to have a 6 month to 2 year view, not pooling's not been up for 3 months.
Yeah, and pooling's still relatively new, and we don't have a need for transaction fees yet because there's no problem with the transactions. This is all going to be very, very different in a year. Okay, going back to the demo question. I think Gene has what he needs now for that one.
Yeah, so this is actually demoing the data layer underneath Project Atari. So this is exactly how the both databases and Chialisp will work to be able to federate those databases. Not everybody on the team, we've gotten that point where not everybody knows about this project, and so I think this was originally scheduled by Paul Hainsworth to be an internal demo. But it's also something certainly that we could potentially record and replay for the public. There's nothing there other than we'll refer to it as Project Atari as the underlying customer. But this is a generalized infrastructure to be able to move large data sets independently of the chain while confirming that all the databases are in sync and have all the right data in them.
Cool. So we have interesting one. Ripple just patented an Oracle tech, presumably for their own system. This person thinks, and I kind of agree, it's a bad sign in the space right now to be patenting and holding these things close to your chest. Does Chia plan to patent anything? And if so, what would the patenting criteria be?
So we are going to be getting a lot of patents. The first patent we applied for sailed through. It has not been issued yet, but will be shortly. And there's going to be a large set from that below. We are all about the defensive use of patents. We would never offensively use patents. We would only use them to counterattack someone who attacks us or the space. And watch this space for news next week.
Yeah, there's probably definitely updates to this question next week. Follow up on Asteroids and Atari. Is Gene implying that both projects are climate related?
Yes.
Easy answer. Really easy answer to the question.
Easiest AMA all day.
Right. Can we just keep having yes, no ones? It'll be super easy. even reputable pools now offer their own clients, meaning that Chia nodes can reduce drastically. Is there any measures in place to mitigate a high reduction in decentralization?
We hope farmer intelligence is the number one thing that stops that. You, as a farmer, have the option to run your own node. I will say that the argument that the node software is so inferior to these is a little bit overstretched. That said, we certainly have things we can improve, and we are going to be continuing to improve those. We target the Pi 4 not because we have to, but because we want to. If it can work there, it can work anywhere better than the Pi 4. And that's important. I think you'll find that our first customers specifically point out the accessibility and the width of full nodes as being one of the core reasons they're going to use this chain. So as a farmer, it is in your best long-term interest, if you want to make the largest return on your farm, to be a decentralized node validating decentralized. Now, there is no reason that pools can't create farming tools that still allow you to be the mempool and allow you to sign the transactions. But let me be very, very clear, because there's an intentional miscommunication. If the pool signs the block for you, they have your private key and they can spend any of your money associated with that private key. Just because they don't have the 24-word seed doesn't mean they don't have the private key. It is the private key that signs half of the 2 signatures necessary to win a block reward. So if anybody's trying to tell you that they don't have your private key, but they're going to sign a block on your behalf, they are dangerously lying to you.
Yeah, and also I think we've seen a lot of people say that the node software is not good. And as Gene said, we can definitely attest it can be made better, and we are working on that. But again, I've seen a lot of people say it's not good enough, quotes, but I haven't seen anyone actually make anything better. We've seen people claim they're working on something better. We've seen people say they are working on or trying to or testing something better, but no one has actually in the wild deployed node software and said, hey, we wrote a more efficient node. Here it is. If they did, we would gladly take a look at that and invite them to help incorporate that work back into our stuff. Like we're not saying we've made the best node software and no one can make a better one. We're saying we made the best we could with the resources and time and priorities we had that does the job and does it well enough for our needs, and we will iterate on it. If someone else thinks it can be done better, we invite them to help us make a better one. And we've seen plenty of people claim they can make a better one or want to make a better one, but I haven't seen one actually running that they've shared with anyone. If there is one out there, it's in a black box that no one knows about.
Yeah, and look, the things that are expensive when you're validating chain or you're trying to validate new transactions are BLS signatures and verifying VDFs. And right now in our client node software, that's done in C++. There's really no way we can make that much faster without coming up with both either interesting new ways to do BLS signature verification. And by the way, there are a lot of folks working on exactly that. There are 2 core BLS libraries, ours and BLST from Supranational, who we partner with. The amount of assembly is going to increase in there so that you have more supported processors to go faster on that. But it is fundamentally those things that are slow. It is not the otherwise components of the node generally. Those are the things that when you dig into it are the actual slow parts, and that's the crypto.
We get 2 here that kind of go together, so I'll kind of lump these together in one. The first is, when should we expect the next big update? Colored coins, they assume, which is, we now call cats. And the second one is, when will the standard of cats be online?
I think both of those are basically being finalized this week, and releases either next week or the week after.
Okay, there you guys go. Not long. Sooner than our usual definition of soon. That's for
Soon, yes.
How did the hackathon go? This person is hoping to learn from examples of implementing Chialisp in a web app, and they were suggested that source code might be available post hackathon. Well, there is. So the hackathon announcement was on Reddit, I believe, with the winning projects, and they listed them by name, and most had domain names and URLs. I think you can find their GitHubs from that pretty easily. Most of them published their code on GitHub. I don't think all the winners did, but most did. There is some code you can go through there if you're looking for those kinds of examples. All in all, the hackathon, I would say, having been involved with it to some degree, the results were pretty cool. There was some really neat stuff that came out of it. The overall program, we have mixed feelings about how it came out. with the folks running it, but the actual results were pretty interesting, and there were some pretty cool things that came out of it. I will say I didn't see that many Chialisp examples that were open sourced on GitHub to look through, but there should be a couple there for you to look at.
Jay, can I give some insight on hackathons in general?
By all means.
Please.
Please. We realize the value of hackathons. We do. Creating cool and interesting things using our technology on our platform, doing interesting stuff. As we move across 2022, we're going to be hosting our own hackathons, most likely going to run those quarterly and with a ton of involvement from the Chia crew. So looking forward to sort of the next generation and the next level of hackathons here at Chia as we go across 2022.
I would also add, it's important to understand that our third party who did this last hackathon, they were going to do it regardless of whether we helped them or not. So we were aware that they were going to spend enough money to draw in developers and kind of, work with this community no matter what we did. So we chose to engage with them to try to improve that, and I think we did improve what otherwise would have happened. We are unhappy with the final outcome. That was the final thing that they did not do that we kind of pushed them to do. But we have always been willing to make that whole, and that's what we chose to do. So, please understand that if anything, we were making sure that our community was well taken care of through that process.
Okay. Are we willing to discuss the price of coins? And they say the return of miners. I think what they're trying to imply is an increase in farmer activity as well.
Look, I'll say this. We don't really care about the price minute to minute. I'm sorry you do. I would suggest that this is a longer term investment and that you do what most people who do well on long-term investments do, and you buy it and put it away and don't look at it for a while. What we're far more interested in is the price going up because we've done fundamentally real, new, and interesting things. If you did not see Project Atari and Project Asteroids on our roadmap being delivered like right now, I think you'd have a pretty good argument with, what the hell are you guys doing? But I think if you go look at the branches that are the underlying pieces for these projects, you will see that there are 20 plus developers kicking serious behind implementing stuff that has to be there to scale this blockchain up. And it's cool stuff. I think everybody's going to be really excited when we can be even more candid about who those customers are. They are extremely excited. Their use cases are almost perfect blockchain use cases. They're situations where not everybody trusts each other, but they need to. And so they need a way to be able to leverage that trust in a way that is open and transparent. These are really exciting needs. And so we're really excited about those folks saying, we looked at all the technology and this is the only thing that could solve our problem.
It's like a classic value versus valuation thing, Gene. We'll go with value every time.
And something else I want to share real fast. The number one counterpoint argument about the price that I see all the time in Reddit is people saying, whenever someone says Chia moves with Bitcoin like the rest of the market does, the number one counterpoint I see is, no, it doesn't. It goes down when it goes down. It doesn't go up when it goes up. Or no, it doesn't move with Bitcoin. It moves completely separately. I just, real fast, I'm going to do a quick screen share here. I want to show you guys on CoinMarketCap here. This is right here. This is the last 7 days of both Bitcoin and Chia. And as you can see, they're pretty much in sync. And if I go to 1 month, they're pretty much in sync. And if I go to 3 months, there's a little bit of discrepancy, but by and large, they're pretty much in sync. So I would say that the argument that Chia is moving on its own and only down is just not true. It's just a bad argument. It moves with the rest of the market like everything else does in this space. And as Gene said, that's okay because we're not focused on that. So.
Yeah, and maybe a more practical answer is if you can get a really good deal on hard drives right now, the break even is like 12 to 13 months, which is a little long for some farmers. Some farmers might say, I already have the storage. That's a great deal. In other words, anybody who started farming in the beginning, they're doing much better than anybody who dollar cost averaged the coin because you can't predict the price of the coin. People were speculating at the beginning. So anybody who invested money in farming equipment is actually doing much better than anybody who bought the coin at a dollar cost average over the last 6 months.
Exactly.
Yes, and I'll remind folks that the early adopters of Bitcoin, certainly Bitcoin mining wasn't very valuable at first.
Sorry,
but
one second. I chat just so you know, I'm aware it went to a black screen when I screen shared and went back. I am fixing that right now. Just give me 1 second.
We'll wait for that.
YouTube. I'm like, I see everybody.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no. So
Right.
apparently OBS, if I do the screen share and then go back to Zoom, the Zoom executable actually changes its process ID, and once the process ID changes, OBS can't hook it anymore. So I have to like unconnect and reconnect.
Anyway, I think we're back.
Yeah.
What I was saying was, back when 16 Bitcoin was like 10 cents, I think people would still like to have the 16 Bitcoin. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So if you didn't see that graph I showed, apologies, folks, but the graph showed what I was describing to you.
Look, it's our challenge at the much higher level to break free from Bitcoin's price movement. That is what we aim to do over the next couple of years, and that's important. Now, we're always going to have sector headwinds and tailwinds. When something bad happens or something good happens, like today, I believe that the price of Bitcoin is up because the tether uncertainty is actually lower now that the CFTC has looked at it than it was before the CFTC had looked at it.
Next up, would Chia have any interest in joining the UTXO alliance that Cardano and several other chains have recently formed?
We'd certainly be open to it. I know Bram is a bit suspect of the various ways that UTXO folks have so far tried to solve the currency problems and has a very specific view of what that should be. But, we are strong believers that the UTXO model, though our simplified version of it, is absolutely the right way to go. And we're not alone in that, as you can tell. Quite a few folks have kind of come around to the account-based model, and Ethereum isn't the best architecture decision for a blockchain.
Okay. One of our favorite oldies but goodies that comes up every month, and we'll gladly answer it every month just so people don't think we're ignoring it. Any updates on the IPO? And this one has a twist. Any updates on when the next hackathon will be?
I'll take the first one and hand the second one to Paul. The first one is we are still on an accelerated timetable. I will say this for folks to understand that with an IPO, you enter a quiet period where you can't comment on news. You can imagine why we wanted to be able to talk about Project Atari and Project Asteroids before we entered a quiet period. So that somewhat has driven our timing in that sense. Paul?
Sure. Next hackathon should be, again, it's going to be driven by our team, internal team, and that should be coming up in Q1. We want to get it right, do it right. We're going to be working with our partners at Hacker Earth to run a hackathon that we're proud of and we want to stand behind. Should have more of my team in place, which is the developer relations team, to really move that along and focus on it and ensure that everyone has a great experience.
All right. Gene, this one you have opinions on. Any comments on the new stock to flow model that was posted in Keybase?
Okay, I have two very drastically different comments on this. First comment is whoever did that did an excellent job. I really like that. That was a really cool website. However, I hate that model. I don't believe it's accurate at all. Now, that said, I think it's one of those astrology things that enough people believe that in fact it guides people to a price that comes true because enough people believe it. Ultimately, I think that's dangerous because I think fundamentally these things will start to trade based on their actual real world impact and not the kind of on-chain casino that we're currently in. But that's months to years from now. So you're probably fine playing with stock to flow for right now.
But that being said, the halvings of the coin certainly have reduced the available supply in the market. So if all things being equal, if the demand stays the same and you half the supply from the farmers, then obviously the price will go up if the demand stays the same. So there is some basic economic theory behind it, but I always like graphs that go up like that. So yeah, I like the website. I was asked to make a stock to flow model for Chia, and somebody already did it for me. So thank you guys. So I can save some Excel time.
Yeah, as I said, it's a really cool tool. It's important, I think, for people to see the halvings. And look, there's some commentary here. When we were building the tokenomics, there's two competing kind of issues out there, maybe three. One is we wanted to get as close to 21 million coins out in farmer hands pretty darn quickly, and we get to 20 real quick. We got 42% in 6 years, right? And already 2 million coins are out to farmers, so a little less than 10% are already in the public hands. But at the same time, we have some price expectation over the years timeline. And we don't necessarily think that it should be worth $1 trillion a year to farm Chia. I mean, there is some realistic number that we'd like to see out there in the future. And so, we certainly use things like Ethereum and Bitcoin over time to kind of model that out. So that's where the halvings come in. When you dig into it, it ends up looking a lot like Bitcoin over its first 11 years. So we try to get that out there in the first 11 years of our chain as well. But, and a lot of people have asked this question in the past, and I think it's interesting to go ahead and mention it. We will never stop trailing emissions. We will have a small amount of a couple 100,000 coins a year. And the reason for that is literally the size of the Pacific Ocean. All financial markets slow down from about 3:30 p.m. Pacific to about 6 p.m. Pacific. And if that were the case, there's farmer or miner rewards to like not making blocks during that time to artificially increase the value of blocks that are in demand. And we wanted to make sure that there was an incentive not to do that.
We're coming up on the 43-minute mark, so let's try to get through as many of these as we can. I'll try to go for a bunch of ones that have kind of shorter, easier answers. Before I do that, let me get one that's going to have a slightly longer answer to get that out of the way. Derwit just disappeared from my screen.
John Michael answered it.
Oh, I didn't know if you were answering it live, so I typed an answer, but I'll like give.
Sorry, I can't remember how to word it properly.
I'll paraphrase it.
Yeah.
What if somebody threw a bunch of mojos at the mempool to try to screw the network up?
There we go. Yes.
Yeah. So a fee-based transaction market is designed specifically to kind of thwart this attack. Eventually, yes, it would be a pain in the ass for everybody who is enjoying zero transfer fees right now. And if somebody spammed the network with a bunch of transactions at, one with moving one mojo for zero fee, eventually then people that wanted to do real transactions would increase their fee to one mojo. And then if the attacker increased their attack to one mojo, then the real people would increase their fees to two mojo and such. And then it comes to a natural equilibrium, which the attack becomes really expensive to pull off. And then they go away, right? This is exactly the same attack vector that exists in Bitcoin and every other, fee-based cryptocurrency market.
And even though the argument could be, well, if they have a lot of Chia they're willing to spend to do this, increasing from one mojo to two doesn't matter. But the reality is doing the attack where you're only spending one mojo and then doing the attack where you're now spending 5 mojo, like you just cut your capacity to do it by 5, and it's going to keep scaling up faster and faster. There will be a point where the attacker, it's no longer worth their effort, but hasn't actually impacted transaction fees in any material way.
And I think the larger conversation there is that there are chains that have stalled recently because of large transaction dumps on their blockchain. And I like that. I don't believe that's feasible for us because of how nodes validate blocks.
Right.
So,
and also because those chains can't handle the amount of transactions we can handle per.
That's right.
JM, can you discuss what you're currently working on other than playing League of Legends?
So I'm working on a mining versus farming blog post that will be up. It's actually done. It's a nice wall of text, and I've created a Bitcoin TCO model to go along with the farming TCO model that I have for Chia. And I've done quite a bit of research on, Bitcoin, on some of the stuff that was released by the Digiconomist lately. He has a new study on e-waste. So I've been spending a lot of time there. So I've been very thankful to Chia that I've got to spend a ton of time on sustainability in the last month. I've been working with a bunch of hyperscale vendors and storage vendors. As you guys know on the blog, I released that we joined OCP. So OCP is working on a new sustainability document for circularity. I'm authoring the storage section to see how we can repurpose used drives for Chia farming and other use cases. So boy, a ton of exciting stuff coming here in the next couple of months. We'll have some much bigger announcements that go kind of in tandem with some of the things that Gene mentioned. So.
All right, and a couple quick ones to try to get through here so we can get caught up. Plot shrinking tool when? I believe the last time we talked about that when we said folks it'd be in the next 2 or so releases, I think, and I don't think we've
the developer working on it said that he is done with the format. He's writing a test tool to figure out what the resources look like to shrink the plot. Paul and myself have talked quite a bit about what would be the kind of benefit to farmers, as far as is it 2%, is it 5%, and what would the tool look like to go do that? So certainly there's other higher priority things on the list, as we just talked about. There are some exciting new plotters coming in a very soon build. I think some people have noticed on the GitHub some of the integration of some of the third-party plotters into the GUI and to the main software. So there's the team's working on a lot of that stuff as higher priority to make it much easier to plot for the majority of people.
Also, just real quick, I'm glancing at the YouTube chat. I am seeing a lot of questions in YouTube that are questions we've answered earlier in this call. I do apologize to you guys if I don't pull your questions up and we answer them. Only because they have been answered in this stream, and you can roll back and watch them in the YouTube video. And so, with the amount of time we have available, I don't want to rehash stuff over and over again for late arrivals. It's not an I'm not paying attention to you thing. It's just a trying to get things moving along thing. So next up, the ASIC timelords produced by Supranational. Who are they for? Who's going to be running them?
So there are two things. We're obviously going to run a bunch of them. But we're also going to make them available on our website, most likely, where you can buy them. Price will probably be somewhere between, on the low end, $250, and on the high end, $1,000. We will not make money on that, trust me. But we just need to kind of see what the BOM on each of the individual ones is, and that's still being finalized. But the way you should probably think about it is like our current best thinking is that you'll have this little toaster-sized thing, or maybe a little smaller, and it'll have a wall wart and a USB plug, and basically your computer on the other side of it just needs to be average. You still actually build the proofs of time over on the computer, but you do the time calculation on the ASIC. And we very much want other people to run them. That's the whole point. Also, to the extent possible, we're open sourcing this, but as everyone knows, open source hardware is a more difficult thing than open source software.
You still have to actually manufacture it.
Right. But we are going to run a run of these, think, I don't know, tens of thousands max, and make those available to folks who want them.
All right. When KuCoin, and I'm assuming this person's asking basically is the cats. I'm guessing they mean when is cats going to be, which I think we kind of talked about a little bit ago.
Yeah. Well, I also think they're thinking who's going to rate a cat.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, you're right. A cat would be fun. Yeah, who needs Dogecoin when you can have KuCoin?
See, cats are better.
The cat standard, yeah. Can we give a description briefly between the differences and similarities between the Chia coin and a future offering on a public stock exchange? This person has been asked the question a lot, and they don't really have a great answer for it. This is perfect for Gene.
Sure. So the Chia coin is like Bitcoin. The only difference from Bitcoin and Chia coin is that we own a bunch of it too. But that is a corporate asset. The corporation has kind of two different pieces. It has a profit-making opportunity around supporting all of this rollout with major governments and industries. And so we will have revenue and likely profitability. In the early days, we're not as focused on that because right now chain adoption is more important than revenue. But ultimately that will, balance out. And in fact, we expect our customers to somewhat demand that we're there and making sure that we're, making money on professional services and therefore staffed up at the level that they're going to need to support them. And so, the equity is a shareholder's claim on the pre-farm. So that's back there behind there. If you're ever to be liquidated, you'd be able to get your portion pro rata. It's also a claim on the future cash flows of that business that provides support to various businesses and NGOs and governments to actually deploy Chia for their use cases. So those are the kind of two things there. As a shareholder, you have rights and abilities to vote on board members and, executive changes, how the business works generally. As a coin holder, you get none of that. You are just having a coin. That coin is useful either directly as a store of value, as a means of transfer, and as an underlying piece of the infrastructure and rails for other companies and entities to put their assets on chain and trade them. So, carbon credits, later equities, debt, those kinds of things. Your coins will be being used to turn into those using the CAT standard.
Okay. Regarding the full nodes again, a significant factor for some people is the disk space over time. Do we expect that we'll be able to reduce usage currently using things like the blue boxes, but anything else coming down the road in the future that might help reduce
so the blue boxes will shrink the size of the database some. It is not going to be like cutting it in half. Let's be clear about kind of what the magnitude is. There also has been no effort yet to look at keeping the database size small. It has been totally focused on speed of sync, speed of use of the node. So that has been, the trade-off that we hear from the community is that they want performance and making sure they're winning blocks and those sorts of things over this issue first. We will be coming back to it. There is going to be database growth. The blockchain database for Bitcoin is 400 gig, 4-ish. So, we're at a 10th and 6 months, 9 months. So we're a little faster, but not a lot faster. And, ultimately, one plot for your database isn't that big of a number, actually.
I was going to give a more practical answer from the storage space, which is even a mainstream NVMe right now is 10 cents a gigabyte. So if you have a 20 gigabyte database, it's $2. And if you run it on an SD card, you're looking at $1 worth of space. It's we think it's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Like my average Steam game is like 70 gigabytes.
There is a bit of irony in that a system you have set up that is handling for many people, petabytes of data. They're concerned about a database going from a few gigs to a few hundred gigs. But they do have a good point in that it's big, especially if you're trying to resync it. But
yeah, I don't know, Gene, would we expect the size to kind of continue to scale linearly? If we think there's a maybe 20-30% optimization once we compress the blocks, is it going to scale linearly in the next year? A year from now, is it going to be 2x, 3x?
Yeah, I think it's probably wise to assume that, and as a kind of a worst case, there are some pruning that we can do, and there are things that Bitcoin's done that you can decide that you want to have a smaller set of that, and still be able to, especially with the Electrum wallet stuff, validate a mempool and sign your blocks. So, look, there are things we can do. They just aren't high priority right now until it becomes 100 gigabytes or 200 gigabytes, right?
Next up, when it comes to the Time Lords and the blue boxes helping compress that, are there incentives for running a Time Lord besides supporting decentralization? The short answer to that is no. The long answer to that is for king and country.
Kind of. I mean, if you're running a local Time Lord, it does protect you from network segmentation, right? Like there are some small benefits. It's not like you're not winning block rewards for
no,
it.
but they said incentives, not benefits. So clearly they're talking about a reward structure.
If I had a really, really, really big farm, running a Time Lord is a no-brainer. At a couple hundred terabytes, I run one, but for king and country, right? As your farm grows, the incentive becomes network segmentation and then global network issues.
And as your pool grows as well, right?
Do we have a way of measuring Chialisp adoption? And if so, what's the status?
We are already starting to talk about how to do that. The problem with all sorts of these metrics is they just all kind of stink. It's like lines of Chialisp code. Well, a bad developer looks better than a good developer. Total developer headcount, but we keep hiring them. So it's like, is that good or is that bad? Right. So anyway, we are working on that. We think that it is a key metric to understand how to kind of quantify how large the Chialisp development community is over time. But it's early, and we're trying to figure out what those metrics look like. Paul, you want anything on that?
Yeah, my job is to grow the Chialisp developer community, and that's really key to expanding what we're doing there. We've done a great job thus far. My job is to take it to the next level and focus on that Chialisp developer experience, basically through the 3 C's of DevRel, and that's code. We want to help both new and experienced developers learn and understand Chialisp better. That's code snippets, example projects, and contributing to open source community projects as well, and communities. Content, a lot of great blog posts focused on developers, tutorials, tech talks, Chialisp focused AMAs like this, other stuff like that. And community, that's working with devs and other community members and outlets like Twitter, Stack Overflow, Keybase, of course, Reddit. And once COVID winds down, more things in person. Another part of growing that community, the Chialisp community, is really our community of farmers here. We've heard from a growing number of folks who have been involved with us for a long time that they're ready to take that sort of next step. And we want to provide that on-ramp through training, education, connectivity, experience to bring folks into that amazing program language, which is Chialisp. So a lot of stuff coming up in the coming days and weeks. We're hiring a DevRel team working with me globally. So a lot more to come around Chialisp. I've got a ton of stuff to do, and we're expanding the team, as I said, and a lot more on that in the coming days and weeks.
And that means if you know somebody who's good at DevRels, have them send something to jobs@chia.net.
Yes.
The other thing I would add is that Paul Hainsworth did something I really liked. He looked at the development team and went, "So you think you're done with cats? Where's the documentation?" So what we're going to start seeing is more of these things shipping with the actual documentation, so that you as a developer can look at our cat standard and our first cat implementations and go, okay, I understand how it works. I can mirror it. I can think about how to expand it. Those are things that are definitely coming.
And we've seen some great community folks doing new and interesting tutorials, and we're starting to see this community really starting to build. But just to echo your point, my brother from another mother, Paul, and I've had the same kind of conversations, and what we need to do to just really make amazingly great documentation and how to move this amazing language forward.
So we're coming up the top of the hour, but we did start about 5 minutes late, so I'll let us run over a little bit. I want to grab one from YouTube because it's been mentioned twice in the chat so far today, and I feel like the question, I don't think the person's trying to ask a spicy question, but I feel like their thought process is it's a spicy question, but it's really not, and it's actually worth sharing. They asked, how's the Chia crew going to report the Chia we farm to the IRS? Do we have some sort of tax strategy? And the answer is the way you report any cryptocurrency that you mine, and us being a Chia employee is no different from you being a farmer in the wild. Just to be clear, no one at Chia is allowed to farm on company-owned hardware. We only farm on our own personally bought hardware, our own personally bought resources, and our own personally paid for electricity. And so we're just like you. And they're actually, when you do IRS paperwork, you have to fill out forms for crypto. And there is a section already outlined in your tax paperwork for crypto that you mined. And so crypto that you farm would, as far as the IRS, now we have very strong feelings about mining versus farming. But the IRS, I'm quite certain, would say basically you mined it, fill out the mining form. And there already is a category for crypto that essentially fell into our lap that was not purchased. There is a tax plan where we have to follow that, just like you. So the answer is to everyone out there: make sure when you do your taxes, what you farm, you have to declare as well.
My actual advice is speak with an attorney or a tax representative who will give you.
Exactly. I actually have a really great accountant who is very well versed in my unique tax situation of living in one state but spending time in another, and also has dealt many times in the past with people who traffic very heavily in cryptocurrencies. So like this guy, I just give him my stuff and I'm like, make sure I pay what I legally have to pay, but no more than that. And he's really good at that. That is the best route to take.
Yep. Jay, I think it's now the second or third question on the last IRS form that I saw. So they're serious.
Yeah, they definitely put some priority into like making sure we're very well visible. And things like TurboTax and stuff now are like, did you get crypto? Are you sure? Like they're really, yeah.
Yep.
Are there any variations of proof of stake consensus that we think is viable and can make proof of space and time irrelevant? Or are we Nakamoto consensus for life?
Nakamoto consensus for life. Look, proof of stake is this technology that's been named a lot of things over the last 20 years, and that proof of work was designed to fix. So from that perspective, we don't think any of these other consensus algorithms are going to make it. They are the rich get richer. They are buyable, and people underestimate what sort of economic resources can be brought against a buyable chain. It is something where you can borrow nearly $1 trillion overnight.
I think I'll just, people get those tattoos that are like Asian languages, and they hope that it says what they think it says. I'm just going to get the Japanese kanji symbol for the actual name Nakamoto.
Yeah, and I find Brand did a video like a couple of years ago at Stanford, I believe, talking about proof of space and time, and he had a whole section in there on why proof of stake sucks and doesn't work. And I rewatched it a couple of times now that I've done some proof of stake research and I've read all Vitalik stuff, and now it's actually clicking and making sense. I'm like, oh, bonding and slashing, this is bad, like not good. You do not want that in a blockchain.
Yeah, look, the thing about slashing that people kind of don't catch is that a real true bad actor will make it so that somebody not guilty will get slashed in a reorg. And I mean, who wants to take it for the team, right? Which farmer wants to lose a whole bunch of money because, well, the only way the chain goes forward is if you do. I wish you luck on that conversation.
And then I'm going to get two quick ones out of the way, and then we'll get to one kind of longish one to kind of wind things down. Who's Sargonas on Reddit? That's me. Actually, I am Sargonas. This is probably our AMAs are about the only time I'm ever like Jay Eckert on screen. Everywhere else, I'm Sargonas. I've been Sargonas since like the 90s on the internet. But yeah, that's me. And they say thank you for your level-headed community involvement. You're welcome. As we've joked about before in past calls, I was very heavily active on Reddit for Riot Games on League of Legends. I was forged in the fires of 140 million LoL players on Reddit. So, Chia community, I'm ready for you.
Gentlemen, unfortunately, Chia work calls. I have to run,
Right.
but you guys can continue to run.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Later, Gene.
One other quick one, and then we'll kind of close with a complicated one. Can we have an official swag store? Actually, that's something I'm working on. It's been something I've been working on for a few months. I'll just be honest. I want to get you guys a swag store. I want there to be cool swag. It has to get prioritized against all the other things that I do. I wear many hats around here as the vice president of ecosystem operations. There is a lot that I do. And there's a lot that I do that isn't even part of my domain just because I can. Especially if I see Gene fuddling with things that are distraction to him and they shouldn't be working on, I take them away from him. So there's all kinds of things that I work on. So things like a swag store I work on and then kind of get set aside and work on. But yes, we're working on getting you guys a swag store. I would like to see one. Realistically speaking, given that it is the middle of October and the entire tech world basically shuts down after Thanksgiving for anything productive being done, I would like to say hopefully that at the start of the new year there'll be something really cool for you guys. The second half of that question is, with proceeds going to a charity community, given that we are a green ecological company, I am open to the idea that we sell swag and proceeds going to something green and charitable. That's not a bad idea. We've talked about that internally several times. There is a practical issue to it that we have to figure out implementing, but that is something we've discussed. We don't know for sure. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. When you start doing that, there's all kinds of financial and tax and all kinds of other complications. So we have to kind of figure all that out. But yeah, we're open to it.
We've also got a Chialisp sticker pack coming up that may come out a little bit before the store, but that's also something cool coming up.
Cool. I want a Chialisp sticker.
We don't even have our own internal like Chia hoodies yet, so this is a issue
yeah,
that's near and dear to our heart.
And two folks asking, yeah, also like this is part and parcel to getting stuff internally, which we don't have either. So, this one I think is a good one for Paul, and then we'll kind of close out on this one. Apologies if we didn't get to all of your questions. There've just been a lot. This is actually one of the most question-filled AMAs we've had yet. This is the very first time I wasn't able to clear the queue before the end. So, on one hand, cool, lots of good questions. On the other hand, apologies that we couldn't get to them all. Are we familiar with the Matrix Protocol Dapp on Chia that just released an alpha? It's a DEX with an order book where it looks like anyone can just complete the other side of a trade, very similar to what Bram was talking about in a previous AMA. For Paul or anybody else, is this kind of DApp something that Chia thinks should be a high priority in the hackathons, developer initiatives? Real quick before I let Paul kind of take that one, I at least, we are aware of it. I at least have looked at it pretty closely. They've spoken to us many times in the past. They've applied for a cultivation grant that I'm currently reviewing. So yeah, we are aware of them. It's very cool. It's the exact kind of stuff we want to see, and I'll let Paul kind of expound upon that.
Yeah, I mean, you just teed it up perfectly, Jerry. I'm going to be speaking to Dimitri from Matrix Protocol in the coming days because we do find it extremely interesting. And this is the kind of thing we'd like to see coming out of hackathons and coming out of our developer community, creating new and interesting applications with Chia and with our technology is exactly where we want to go. I think it's really back to those market forces really driving what is new and interesting and where folks want to go and want to take it. We want to be those rails that folks are building the next generation of things on. And I think it's a great development in developer land here at Chia, and we'd love to see more of it. Anybody else got a comment?
No, I think you nailed it. That's for me.
Cool, man.
One last question, and then we're gonna call it. This one's come up 2 or 3 times today, and that is, how do we think about the China market, and do we have anyone taking charge of that market? That's a very long answer that if Gene was here, I would like to have had him kind of expound on it a bit more. But to give you a short answer, we do think about the market. Many of you have met on Keybase and other places Efficient. One of his hats he wears is he's a VP of biz dev, and his area of expertise is biz dev for the Asian markets, including China. He has a lot of experience working in business in China, and he's working with experts that we have to help us in that space and helping us find more experts to work with in that space. So we are thinking about it. We do have people we're working with to both understand the market and work within the frameworks of that market and navigate the rather shifting landscape that currently is happening over the last few weeks in that place. So yeah, we are working on solutions there. Him and Gene are working very closely on that. Unfortunately, I can't give you more specifics in that because I'm not Gene. Also, it's kind of tricky to answer in specifics in that space. But yes, we are thinking.
It is, and obviously, with all the other crackdowns on Bitcoin, we didn't see similar drops in net space as comparable to Bitcoin hash rate. So we believe that there are still Chinese farming, and obviously the pool hasn't dropped that much, but we are working to do whatever we can to, barring government circumvention and whatnot, we are trying to have discussions. So.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for helping us today. Thank you, everyone, for your awesome questions. If we didn't get to your questions, the ones that are in here, we'll try to type out a few answers for some that we can. Also, feel free, if you asked a question that we didn't get to, whether it was in YouTube chat or in the Q&A thing, feel free to come to Keybase. Just ask us in Keybase. Like general chat, we're there. Like if you ask questions in general chat, we'll answer them. Like you don't have to wait for an AMA to ask questions. It's just the easiest way to ask them, kind of like in rapid fire mode, and then we can record it and share it with everyone. But you are more than welcome to ask us questions in Keybase anytime you want. So thanks everyone for coming.